In this 25th anniversary year of September 11th, the Tunnel to Towers Foundation continues to honor America's heroes. Heroes like Fire Lieutenant Michael Wells, who was inspired by 9/11 to serve his community. After 14 dedicated years of service, he lost his battle with occupational cancer, leaving behind his wife, Katie, and their 3 children. Tunnel to Towers honored Lieutenant Wells by paying off the family's mortgage in recognition of his sacrifices. Donate $11 monthly and amplify your impact with a car or land donation. Go to T2T.org.
Listen, all you New Yorkers. Taxi!
Okay, we're looking around.
This is the 77 WABC minicast.
Air conditioning in every classroom. How the hell can there not be air conditioning in every classroom? But Gino started to share some of his stories with us. I wanted Gino to be on tonight because he was terrific. And I want to hear some more stories. I love to hear stories, Gino. Gino Young, author of a great book about his experiences. We'll talk about that in a moment. But, Gino, can you sum up, share with us some of the stories of what happened to those kids?
Yes, well, thank you so much for having me. What I can tell you is that the kids, when they sat at home for all those years, some of them 2.5 years, nearly 3 years, they lost not only educational value, but they lost really any sense of decorum or how to behave and how to function in the classroom. When I would come into the classroom, the children, these are like 14-year-olds, but they were acting like 7-year-olds. They were getting up, they were running around, they were throwing stuff. They had absolutely no sense of decorum whatsoever. They would say anything to anybody without any quirks or qualms about it, because they were taught from the day one that they entered the school that there was no accountability. I worked at Hillcrest High School, which was about I guess I'd say 10 minutes from the city limits of Chicago. And on day one at Hillcrest High School in Country Club Hills, Illinois, one thing that they would tell the kids on day one was that we don't give E's in the school. I mean, we don't give F's in the school. We give E's because no child is capable of failure. So from the moment they entered the school, they were told that they couldn't fail. They were told that there was no accountability and absolutely no standard. So, it's no surprise that I saw the things that I saw. It's no surprise that at the school that I worked at, they had a 47% chronic absenteeism rate, meaning that nearly half of the students at that school missed at least 10% of the school year. So this is the type of mind that we were dealing with. This is the type of school culture, as they call it, that we were dealing with, and it was horrible.
Specific impact on a kid staying at home with Zoom. Some specific examples of what happened to them staying at home with Zoom.
Yes. So when they would stay at home with Zoom, one thing that I noticed with the kids I was dealing with was that I mentioned decorum earlier, but they also they felt like they didn't have to listen to anyone. They felt like they could behave any type of way, and that there was no accountability. I specifically remember one time, and this is something very horrible that I witnessed personally, that I write about extensively in my book, and it's terrible. I remember I was sitting in a classroom one day, and there was this boy and this girl in the classroom, and both of them thought that it was a good idea. There was only maybe about 10 people in the class that day, but they thought that it was a good idea to perform a very graphic sexual activity in that classroom, and they live streamed it over the internet with my face in the background. And I told the school about it, and they did nothing about it. They brushed up under the rug, didn't want to do anything. Their idea of, some sort of punishment was sending the boy home 30 minutes before the school day ended, and the girl, they simply took her out of that classroom, put her into another classroom. And then I became a pariah when I started to go around talking about this, saying, hey, these kids are doing things that we can't even fathom, things we wouldn't even thought about doing in a trillion years, they're doing. And I became a pariah when I went around and started to talk about it. And the next thing I know, I was asked not to return to that school after another incident happened a couple of weeks later, and I received a death threat actually from a student when I was sitting there working in that school system. I received a death threat, and they told me, that since I reported it and everything, that they didn't want me to come back because they didn't think that, I guess for whatever reason they felt like I didn't belong at that school anymore. So, they went out of their way to coddle these kids. They went out of their way to make them feel that there was no accountability whatsoever. And anyone who said anything or anyone who stepped up in any way, shape, or form to try to institute order in that orderless system, they tried to get rid of you. And that's one of the things that I unfortunately bore witness to.
You said that the boy was sent home early. That was his punishment. He was in heaven. He couldn't have been happier than to be sent home early. What a great thing. Exactly. I got to do that stuff again. And also, they made a video, and they put your face on it. Hey, buddy, it sounds to me like they learned a skill.
Yeah. And that's what's so unfortunate, because my thing is this, we talk a lot about the schools, but what are these parents doing? Where does a 14-year-old even in their mind, where do you even get the gumption in your mind to do something so horrific? So my thing is, not only is it, these kids and the school district's fault, I think that these parents should have been held accountable, and that someone should have been investigating these parents, but that didn't happen.
Gino Young, what's the name of your book?
The title of my book is Sex, Drugs, and Illiteracy, The Death of Education in America.
Sex, Drugs, and Illiteracy. About the parents. I believe, as a parent, that it all rolls back to the parents. And I believe that until that kid is 18, who's responsible for that kid it's very clear. It's not the school. It's not other people down the street. It is their parents. That's the job. And when, for example, it's as simple as this. When my kids have a friend coming over, one that I don't know or hadn't met before, another 14-year-old kid come over, the first thing I say to that kid is, do your parents know where you are? Oh, yeah, I think they know. No. Do they know where you are? Call them. And let me talk to them. And I make them call their parents, and then I get on the phone. I introduce myself. It's great to have your kid here. Here's my address. Here's my phone number. I want you to know where the child is. When do you want your kid home? That's my job as a host of a minor. My job as the host of a minor is to make sure the parents know where the kid is. And it's always interesting to me when sometimes I'll get parents who are like, oh, yeah, oh, okay, thanks. They could have cared less. They weren't worried at all, but I was worried, because if anything happens to that kid in my house, guess who it's going to fall on? And so I make sure that those parents know. It's as simple as that. I am responsible for those. I am responsible for my children, and I'm happy to be responsible for them. And when there's trouble at the school, and I feel my kid isn't being taken care of properly, being taught properly, I show up. And I first show up kindly and sweetly, but it can escalate. Gino, it can escalate very quickly.
Yes. And, that's the part that I just don't understand. When I would deal with parents, or I would deal with teachers that would dealing with parents, they would often tell me that there was this overall spirit of apathy amongst many of the parents. They viewed the school day as basically their daycare, and they would get mad at us as teachers for calling, and trying to report anything that their child was doing. It was like that 8-hour block in the day was their day, their time of day to do whatever they wanted to do God knows what with God knows who, and they were very upset if we encroached on that time at all. So, I wish that we had more parents that were like you. I wish we had more parents who were proactive. If we had that, we wouldn't have the situation that we have here in Chicago that's spreading nationally. You wouldn't have these teen takeovers at 2 o'clock in the morning when I'm lying in my bed and I'm getting a call from a friend of mine who lives on the west side telling me that they're taking over the hospital district over by Rush Hospital here in Chicago. We wouldn't have these situations that are going on in these urban populations if parents took accountability. And I blame the parents, and I believe these parents should be held accountable, and they need to start trying some of these parents. I do believe in charging them with these the actions of these children.
You said a magic word. You said parents, plural. There needs to be two parents. They don't have to be a man and a woman. They can be two moms, or they can be two dads, but kids need two. Our biology is set up for two. And when I hear somebody say, well, he's the baby daddy, I'm like, no, he's the father. That's his job. His job is to show up for that kid. And the biggest challenge in many communities, having nothing to do with race, is there are no dads. And that's a huge challenge. Gino Young, great to have you on the other side of midnight. You're a terrific guest. I look forward to having you on again. Thank you, Gino Young.